Unplug your cleaning routine with the Ryobi 18-volt 1 Plus cordless cleaning lineup. From the soap-dispensing telescoping power scrubber to the advanced stick vacuum, Ryobi has a solution for every cleaning task. One battery powers over 300 products, giving you the power to do more, exclusively at the Home Depot.
It's my very strong view that the human body has an amazing innate capacity to heal when given the right environment. And that doesn't include living in a moldy home. That doesn't include being bombarded by toxins in your diet, right? But when you give that body the support that it needs, it then moves into its own innate healing. And that's a beautiful place to be.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by AmpCoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. We have a very special guest all the way from the other side of the country today. We have Terri Hirning. How you doing this morning, Terri?
I'm great, Freddie. It's so great to be here with you.
We are jam-packed with the things we're going to talk about today. Can you just start out and tell the audience a little bit about your about your site, The Real Food Mom, and maybe a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. And Real Food Mom was really born from my story. So I'll explain a little bit about our practice. I am a doctor of natural medicine. I have a doctorate in traditional naturopathy, and we do a lot of dietary education, supplementation education, homeopathy. We do a lot of emotional work too. We work on helping people address and release emotions that might be impacting their best selves and how they show up in the world. We really are kind of a full circle practice, a very holistic practice. And my story started from my son's autism recovery. And it was really just through the process of understanding what it took to heal him and recover him that I really wanted to bring this out to the world, because all of the things that we did with my son, many of those things can apply to other people who are out there looking for ways to improve their health and wellness. And so there were a lot of similar core components that we could bring out into a greater population. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Oh, I love it. And you know what I really enjoy, and I organically attract these type of guests on the show, is that there's lots of people out there spinning with information, and they're going to come at you with facts, but when somebody brings the information and practice and they're delivering knowledge. So the fact that you are a doctor and a naturopath, but you're also raising a child that's going through, like you said, this recovery from autism. So you're really in the trenches. You're not just, speaking about something you picked up from a course or a book.
Well, and I think I like to think that that's one of my specialties, is when I'm sitting down with a family and we're talking about dietary changes that might benefit their child, or an adult without autism that needs to implement different dietary or nutritional interventions, or whether we're talking about how to get supplements into a child who won't swallow capsules or can't swallow capsules. I've been there, done that. When I'm sitting across from a family whose child won't sleep or screams most of the day and night, I get that level of stress. I totally feel you on that, and I've walked your walk. So I'm not sitting here up in my ivory tower telling you in theoretical terms, this is what needs to happen. It's usually because I've walked that journey myself. My own health and wellness has evolved in the last 15 years as a result of this journey as well. And I've been working on healing my own hormone issues and mold toxicity and, right? Like many of us are, And I'm by no means perfect. And it's that continual searching that I think brings a lot of value to the clients that choose us, because I have tried a lot of things. I've done a lot of things personally with my own family, with those very closest to me, but I'm always searching for what else is out there. What else can optimize your wellness protocol? What else can optimize your recovery from whatever it is you might be facing? And then I'm always empathetic, and I think I'm able to connect with people on a really deep level, and to where we can get into some places that maybe people haven't wanted to go before or weren't ready to go before. So my journey is really one that has evolved into bringing my knowledge to other people.
I love that. So we actually met. We met at Klinghart's clinic in Morristown, New Jersey. And we were in, the demonstration hall where we've got all the different modalities. We've got hyperbaric chambers and sleeves to put your arm in that changes your metabolic rate. There was actually like light laser infusion, red blood cell irradiation. I forgot how many things that were there, but I was there with Amp Coil, and you were there working with the AMD Ionic foot bath. And we sat down and we started to have a conversation while I was doing a foot bath, which is something that I've done a lot of. I owned a machine for a while that I had bought off Amazon. I had tried them in spas and noticed a little benefit, but I actually sat down with the AMD unit, and I think I was really blown away. First, all the different colors that were coming out of the water, and we could talk about that in a little bit. But I really felt it throughout my whole body. My head immediately cleared up and I could feel all these sensations. So I was like, wow, this is really different. And so this is something that you have a knowledge of expertise on. So can we talk a little bit about this foot bath and why you're such a fan?
Absolutely. And I was super skeptical at first, Freddie. I see a lot, especially in the autism community. Being an autism mom, first and foremost, we get a lot of things that are kind of scammy, right? And we always have to be conscious consumers about what's out there. And when I was approached by AMD, this was almost 5 years ago, and they were looking to put together a research study in the autism community. And they were looking at how could this technology influence autism recovery and kiddos on the spectrum. My son was 11 at the time, and I also worked for Great Plains Laboratory and New Beginnings Nutritionals. They're pretty big names in the autism community. Mm-hmm. So I'm very science driven. I want to see labs, I want to see proof, but I also really respect subjective improvement and subjective reporting. And so I went in very skeptical, but with an open mind. And with the very first cleanse for my son, which was a 20-minute session, I noticed changes in executive functioning, in just complex thinking, in communication. So for me, having run the gamut, my son was diagnosed at 4, almost 5. Now he's 11. We've gone down the biomedical treatment route for a number of years. I considered him recovered at that point, but there were still some things that we were looking to optimize. So for me to see something on Cleanse 1 was, pretty astounding. And then what we saw over the course of 120 days, so we did an every other day cleansing schedule, and mid trial, we bumped that to 3 days on, 1 day off. That's become the pretty classic schedule for anyone with chronic illness, okay? And so this really was leading edge stuff because we hadn't looked at this technology in the autism community prior to this. So my son, we used a measurement called an ATEC score, and that stands for Autism Treatment Evaluation Checklist. My son's score was a 25 at the beginning of the trial, and by 120 days, he was down to a 3. And that's
Wow.
pretty astounding, right? We had done diet, we had done supplements, homeopathy, other forms of detox. We had a 4-IR sauna in our home. Like we were no slouches to the concept of detoxification. And so that was really what kind of sold me, because right along with my son, I was doing sessions. And so I always like to try and do these interventions as well, just to get an idea of what a person might experience or see. So we cleansed our whole family over this time. So I saw changes in my foot bath. I saw changes between my cleanse versus my husband's cleanse versus my daughter's cleanse. I think I kind of stunned you at Clean Heart. And as a practitioner, I can speak a little bit more freely on the colors in the water and different things that I've kind of correlated over the years. I know AMD has to be very careful about what they say about, different things. But I looked at your water and I said, so when did you have mold exposure? And you were like, oh my gosh. And you told me your story. And so, while we would never make a diagnosis off of the color of somebody's water, anecdotally, I've put together my own interpretations of different colors and textures and different things. And so what I saw was really intriguing. And so we brought it into our practice. And what I thought I saw with my son was just the tip of the iceberg. What I've seen with clients has blown the tires off of the car, so to speak. I have had people come in with chronic pain, inability to lift their arms up over their heads, not able to make a fist to brush their teeth in the morning. I've seen kiddos on the autism spectrum who are not sleeping, who do these therapy treatments and are sleeping, are more verbal, people with reduced pain, less anxiety. So it was really our own experiences, and then bringing it into our practice just really, exponentially changed my perception on who might this technology benefit. And then we went on to do some research. So we did a study on glyphosate excretion. I did a mold case study, and we're doing an iridology and sclerology study. So we're looking at how can we track detoxification changes in the iris and the sclera, and we're getting ready to embark on an MS study. So we have some really exciting things coming up. I'm super excited.
That's incredible. So for the audience at home, how does the AMD foot bath, how does it work? And then how does it differ from other units on the market?
And this is really important because there are vast differences that I'll get into, but I want to talk about the basic technology. So when we talk about ions, this machine is generating both negative and positive ions. And there's a big difference between this unit and some of the other units out there. They are the only one with a patented dual polarity system, meaning it alternates between generating negative ions and then switching mid-cycle and generating negative ions. What does that mean? Okay, so when we let's talk about a basic cleanse schedule. Okay, so you put your feet in the water, the machine is on, it's generating negative ions. Toxins either have a positive or a negative charge. So when the machine is generating negative ions, it's attracting, it's that old, opposites attract, right? So the negative ions attract the positively charged toxins. Heavy metals make up a large category of those positively charged toxins. Then the machine at set intervals, based on the duration of your cleanse cycle, it's going to rotate. And now it's going to be generating positive ions. And this is what is unique about the AMD unit, is that it does have this dual polarity. Most systems out there only generate negative ions. And why is that important? Well, Freddie, your story is one that is really relevant here, because without having the exposure to those positively charged ions in the water, you're not attracting those negatively charged toxins like mold, like Lyme, like, candida. All of those different things have a negative charge. And so without the positive ions in the water, you don't get that complete cleansing experience. So when we did our study on glyphosate also is a negatively charged toxin. So when we look at the autism spectrum, many of the kiddos on the autism spectrum have co-infections like Lyme disease or pandas or other internal, mycotoxin exposures. Some of these things are really impactful for our kiddos. And so not having those positively generated ions, not being able to really give your body some relief from those negatively charged toxins is really important. And so that's one distinction. When we talk about the differences between different units, right? Klinghardt is big. We met at Klinghardt Academy. He's big on EMF and dirty current and things like that, and what that does to the body. So when we're exposed to EMF, we really shut down our body's system from being able to detoxify effectively. This system has been tested and does not have EMF. So your body is able to get into that parasympathetic mode. What is parasympathetic? That's rest and digest. Most of us, especially those of us with chronic illness or chronic infection, we live in fight or flight. If you're a type A, if you're go, 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 high stress, and or you have, some chronic infection going on, chances are your body is really stuck in that sympathetic dominance mode. A piece of the magic of Ion Cleanse by AMD is it really helps move the body into parasympathetic. Many people come into our office and they actually visibly relax right in front of our eyes. I've had autism kiddos who are in nonstop fight or flight. And this is the one therapy that gets their body to literally exhale and to relax to the point where now they can really move into active detoxification. So that's another way that AMD is different. Many units out there do have that high EMF, and that's going to really push you more into that sympathetic dominance. Then we can talk about the parts and the pieces. AMD is a U.S. company. All of the pieces are made in the U.S. They're stainless steel plates, 316 steel. That's why the machine, when you go to buy your replacement plates, it says your 316 plates because it's made with 316 stainless steel. Those things matter. Even though while the unit is on and generating ions, because I get this question a lot from clients, oh my gosh, look at all the gunk in my foot bath tub. Aren't I reabsorbing that? No, you're not. Or I get people who say, well, I want to boost my detoxification. I love essential oils and I want to bring that into my Ion Cleanse bath. I love essential oils too, but save it for after the bath, because once the machine is on and it's generating ions, it's a one-way valve. Your body is not going to reabsorb anything unless you turn the machine off and you leave your feet in the water for a prolonged period of time. So if you're looking to, absorb your essential oils, save it until after your bath, rub them on the bottom of your feet, you'll be good to go. So those are some distinctions. They also recently put out a really interesting blog on one of the electronics testing, and I can't for the life of me remember what it's called, but it basically is a testing that's done on all electronics, and all of our electronics will have it right on the cord, as a matter of fact. It might be the FC notation. I'm looking at one of my cords here. And what that means is if you plug it in, it's not going to generate any weird electrical surging to where it could burn out your other devices. So imagine plugging in your, foot bath that you've gotten on Amazon or another online retailer that doesn't have this certification, plugging it in on the same circuit as your TV or your computer, and it sends an electrical current back to the outlet. Poof, there goes your computer or your TV or whatever. people with compromised immune systems. Safety is of utmost concern for me in my practice. It has an independent medical grade power supply. So the unit that you have, you know these systems, you have a unit that sits on a table or on the floor next to you, and that's where you're programming your time and all of those different things. That whole unit could fall in the water and you would be completely safe. And that is a big difference from other units. Some units out there require a grounding strap so that you are not harmed by the electricity, combining the electricity in the water. This unit does not need a grounding strap. It's very safe and non-invasive, and that is why it's what I choose and use in our practice.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I've had mine for probably 5 weeks now. And the one thing I notice is I cannot do it it's got to be before 3 p.m. for me, because I do get a lot of energy. And this is pretty consistent with me. I won't be able to sleep after I do my foot bath, whether it's positive or negative. I get really charged up. Do you know why that might be? Is that just individual user experience?
Yes, and my business partner has the same experience. And so she loves to do hers. We alternate our schedule. She loves to do hers first thing in the morning. And I'm a nighttime person. I mean, if I'm here in the office and I know I'm going to be working late, sometimes I'll pull the tub under my desk and just do it there. But for the most part, I love to do them at nighttime because I get so relaxed. And it's just a beautiful transition into a great night's sleep. But she's the same way as you. She gets very active. I don't have an answer for you on that.
Yeah, no, it's, I know everybody's different. Same thing with the amp coil. I know there's a lot of, for some reason, it seems like women tend to like to coil in the evening and men like to coil in the morning, because it could be something like that. We should look at that correlation.
Probably something to do with the hormone and adrenal fluctuations, depending upon, your metabolic type. I would love to dive into that because, like I just said, my business partner has the same thing. So it would be fascinating to understand that a little better.
Yeah, so the other question I have is, can we talk about the water for a second and the colors? Because I know this is a big point of contention. There was a big news segment here in the city a few years ago, and where they tried to debunk foot baths and say, well, when you do the bath, for people who don't know at home, when you put your feet in, the water changes colors. It could be orange or brown or have black specks in it or all bubbly. And, the idea are those the toxins coming out of your feet, or is that a reaction from the salt water and the electrical charge?
Probably a little bit of both. And I had someone post this on our Instagram feed when we posted something about Ion Cleanse. Somebody said, watch this documentary. It's been debunked. It's a fraud. And it changes color without feet. 100%. And if you've heard me speak on this, I speak on our research and what I've seen in our practice, and also personally. 100%. It will absolutely change colors without feet in the water. And that's why I have always studied metabolic, urine. I like to study urine. I will do subjective stuff, but I don't really care about what's in the water, other than it's fascinating to me. I'm a data collector, right? So if I can have as many data points out there, how did you feel? What did your lab show? What did your color show, right? Because as much as we can correlate all of this data, I think it is useful because we're still learning. I, by no means, have all of the answers with this technology. All I know is that it helps a large percentage of the people that come to me and want assistance in changing their health and wellness. And so from that standpoint, let's talk about the water. From a purely scientific standpoint, I like to not focus as much on the water because, like you just said, it will change colors without feet. If we ran a session side by side with feet and without feet, and other practitioners have tried to actually study the water, and the company themselves have tried to study the water. And it just is really challenging. There are a lot of pieces to even using distilled water. Even one jug from the next, there are different metabolites in it. So a piece of the color change 100% comes from contaminants in your water supply, minerals in your water supply, and you mentioned adding salt. Some regions we add salt to increase the conductivity of the water. In some regions, we don't add salt because the pollutants and chemicals are so high that we don't need to do that. So we definitely see the gamut when it comes to what happens with different water supplies. And then we have, like at Klinghardt, you had multiple people sitting next to you, and many of them didn't have water that looked just like yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is that unique, individualized piece of detox. I have literally done thousands of cleanses at this point between my family, between our practice, between working conferences, and kind of looking at this on a broader scope. And I can have two people using the same water supply sitting right next to one another and have vastly different cleanses. And so that's that unique area of detox. Can we detox through our feet? Yes, we sweat. We have pores on our feet. We can excrete through our feet. Is that the only piece? Absolutely not. Dr. Klinghardt himself has found that 3 days post a single cleanse, he showed that there was actually a boost in urinary excretion of heavy metals on that third day. So really what you're doing when you get exposed to these ions in a much grander level, you're really opening up those detox pathways, and you're boosting the excretion, the normal excretion that would happen through the kidneys, through the bowel, through the sweat, right? Which is why it works great with other modalities like AMP coil, like sauna therapy, right? And like exercise, intermittent fasting, name your, detox tool that you love. It is a phenomenal companion for that. So is there something to the color change? I mean, I've had people in here, and like with you, I'll ask a question. I've had people where their watercolor didn't change until it switched polarity to where it was in that polarity where it was attracting those negatively charged toxins. And I'll ask the question, have you ever been exposed to mold? I've had a person break into tears. Oh my gosh, we just found out that our apartment has black mold, and I've been so sick and I couldn't figure it out. And their watercolor didn't change. Their husband, who lives in the same apartment, has been exposed to the same mold contaminants. His watercolor started changing about 5 minutes into his cycle. The wife's didn't change until it switched polarity, right? So again, it all really depends on our unique needs for detoxification. And then really it's what else is coming out through the urine, through the bowel, and through the sweat that is just overall boosting your excretory response.
Yeah. The more we talk about this, the need for detoxification and whether, you think you're one of these people in a special group like Lyme or toxic mold or someone trying to recover from the symptoms of autism, this is everybody, which people, I don't think they realize, like the amount of glyphosate you get from handling receipts at the grocery store or just being in an area that's not properly ventilated with aluminum ductwork, or walking down the streets in New York City and the literally the heavy metals coming from the exhaust of a bus. I mean, it's all day, every day because of the design that we've created in this modern world, which is very convenient and there's so many luxuries, but that definitely comes at a cost. And I tell people, it's always be detoxing. It's not something you need to be crazy about, but it is something to consider, much like brushing your teeth, much like, taking care of the body parts you want to keep. Really.
You are absolutely correct. And I'll share a little snippet from our glyphosate study. This was really shocking because the participant with the highest level of glyphosate was an organic food chef. And they ate a lot of lentils and vegetarian protein sources. And what we're finding now is that even organic chickpeas, lentils, beans, those are showing up as highly high levels of glyphosate in even some of these organic products. I encourage everyone, stay abreast of what's being tested and what's showing really levels, because controlling what's getting in, right? And we know that glyphosate isn't just on what's sprayed on the crops as they're growing. It's used as a drying agent for many grains. So even if something didn't have glyphosate sprayed on it during its growing period, it can have it sprayed after the fact. And so all of these things matter. Like I mentioned, other environmental exposures. It's now in our groundwater. It's in a lot of different things. And even in those people who are eating a lot of organic, we can still see really disturbing levels in people. Now, what I will say is that doing testing, doing these therapies, it can be very effective. In our study with glyphosate specifically, we're talking about 12 sessions. We did 12 sessions and we were able to drop our overall glyphosate levels by 34%. So that was 3 times a week cleansing, normal, polarity. And, when I was talking about the negative ions versus the positive ions, when you're doing just a normal session, the program is set for 70% of the time to be attracting those positively charged toxins like heavy metals. So that's that negatively charged ions in the water. And then 30% of the time, it's attracting the negatively charged toxins and it's generating positive ions in the water. Now, when we're working off of that basic schedule, the machine does all of the math for you, thank goodness, and it switches whatever on the preset, if you put in a 30-minute session, it's going to switch at 7 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 7 minutes, then 3 minutes until your 30-minute cycle is done. Now, whenever we do our studies, typically speaking, that's the cycle that I use. So you can see that even though the body was only exposed to the positive ions for 30% of that time, we were really successful in bringing down glyphosate levels by 34% over the control group who didn't have this intervention. And that's huge. And like you said, detox is not a box that you check, right? I did it, I'm good. We have to really stay on our game because we are being bombarded by toxins and chemicals on a daily basis. Like you said, you can't really control, what are you going to do? Not breathe when you're walking down the street when that big bus goes by, right? Like some of this is just inherently a part of living in a modern civilization. And unless you want to, move to a deserted island and grow all of your food, we can't escape some of this. We can certainly mitigate this, diet, our lifestyle, personal care products. So we do have a lot of control over it, but not 100%. And this is that piece where if we just are mindful about what we're bringing into our environment and our homes and our diet, and then bringing in some of these tools that can really be safe and effective at helping us detox. There's not one thing out there, when we look at chronic illness, there's not one thing out there that isn't exacerbated by toxicity, in my opinion. So no matter what you've got going on, or if you just want to, age gracefully, if you just want to increase your longevity, these are the practices that are going to help get you there.
I couldn't agree more. I know it's such a big part of the puzzle for people, and it's, like you said, it's balance. It's bringing things into balance. I often, the other thing I believe after seeing it just across the board is that it's not about going and attacking one thing that you think is this foreign invader or this one virus, or, it's if I get rid of the spirochete from the Lyme bacteria, my life's going to be great. It's never that way. It's never that way. It's so much more about balancing that bioterrain, and part of that is getting the dirt out.
And I feel like we're able to bring the body into balance because the body innately was meant to fight all of these pathogens, right? It's when it's not supported in the right way that things are able to get out of control, right? And that's not even really focusing on one single thing. There's a lot that goes into chronic illness, right? Our mindset, our relationships, our toxicity level for sure. But when we're able to support our body, I have people who feel like, and, even in the alternative holistic world, sometimes we fall into that same rut of, well, I'm going to use this supplement to address a symptom that I have, right? And while I would much rather reach for a supplement than a prescription medication, we're still really band-aiding symptoms. And sometimes that laundry list of supplements can get really, really big. And, my son's journey at some point, he was taking supplements galore 5 times a day, easily. And if I could show you the list of supplements that he was on, it would probably, you would probably know many of those supplements and might be on a lot of them yourself or have been. And I think they were absolutely necessary to get him over that little hump, right? Until we could get his body really supported. But it's my very strong view that the human body has an amazing innate capacity to heal when given the right environment. And that doesn't include living in a moldy home. That doesn't include being bombarded by toxins in your diet, right? So a piece of those, obviously need to be addressed. But when you've addressed the environment, when you've provided adequate nutrition, when you've dealt with some of the microbial component like Lyme disease, and for children with strep, it could be pandas, right? Or some of these other co-infections. But when you give that body the support that it needs, it then moves into its own innate healing. And that's a beautiful place to be, because now you're moving into just providing the support that the body needs. And then the body does the rest, right? When it's overburdened from multiple different avenues, think about, when I think about my son with autism, I'll use his story. I was an older mom when I had him. I had silver fillings in my mouth. I used to heat in my Tupperware plastic. I used to slather Bath and Body Works all over my self. I was so toxic, and I didn't even know that. So coming in, he had this already going on. And then you add in the different onslaughts that he had and that he experienced. And so it's like this onion, and you just are peeling back the layers until you get to that point where now you're just supporting the normal functions of the body, and the body does the rest, right? Sometimes it takes us a while to get to that point, but I truly see that as a possibility for every person.
Yeah, and I know it is a journey. It is a journey. It's a beauty contest. It is not a race. And you just want to be sure that you're just always moving forward. I have one more question for you, Terri. When people are using the AMD foot bath, do you advise people to be adding back in minerals or remineralizing from the possibility of sometimes I know when we lose these heavy metals, toxins, that we also lose some good stuff? Is that happening here?
Yes, in that I always advocate bringing in some minerals to the point that when we give a foot bath here in the office, we always give the person some minerals to replenish. Why is that? Is this machine pulling good stuff out? No. The machine is facilitating the excretion and your body has already earmarked as a toxin. But let's talk about the role of heavy metals, for example, right? So when we have a cellular receptor site, that heavy metal can bind to that cell receptor site much in the way that a good mineral would, be attracted to that cell site, go in through that intercellular communication, right? Well, when the toxin has bound to it, the minerals can't communicate, can't go through that cellular space, okay? So a piece of this is liberating that toxin off of that cell receptor site. Now the minerals can pass through and be utilized. But then there's that aspect of detoxification. We do utilize more minerals while we are actively detoxing. And like Dr. Klinghart's study showed, one single foot bath session, and they saw so you are certainly boosting your overall detoxification, which might mean that an individual needs to bring in some additional mineral. What that looks like for each individual is very different. Another practitioner here in the office, if she does the foot baths on a much, too frequent schedule, she does really feel it with her minerals. I've been cleansing for almost 5 years, and in, certain periods of time, I've cleansed very aggressively. And what that means is 3 days in a row, 1 day off for 45 minutes at a time. And I've had zero issues with mineral imbalances. I have nice, strong nails and hair and great teeth, So it really is specific to the individual in some cases. I take a very conservative approach to where I always recommend even trace minerals just to bolster and support the body through detoxification. So yes, I do believe that is important.
Beautiful. Terri, I ask guests a couple of questions when we close out. So I was wondering, because it's the title of the show, what does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
It means that, and this is really special because, I also do a lot around conscious language, and I feel like beautifully broken means really diving into the inner workings of your body, your soul, your heart, and finding the pieces that maybe need a little bit of extra love and support, because I feel like so much of our outside perception is influenced by, some of these stigmas, like being broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are, like you said, this is a journey, and it's putting back the pieces that completes that journey for us. It's not necessarily how we are broken or why we're broken, but it's really about how we grab those pieces and we put them back together to be a stronger person, a more loving person, a more open person. And sometimes through that process is really who we find ourselves. If I hadn't gone through the process with my son, I wouldn't be sitting here with you on this podcast. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing every single day in the world. And I think it makes us stronger to go inside and find those quote unquote broken pieces and be able to figure out a way to put them back together that works for us.
Beautiful. And finally, if you could leave the audience with a question, if you were to ask someone, what could I do next? Where do I jump in when this all seems overwhelming? Just for some self-examination on what's possible here when we look at what the body can do when it's left with this clean palate, or we've taken a little bit of the toxic load off.
I think one of the questions that I start with is find your biggest exposure, right? What is your biggest exposure? And that's going to be different for every person. And kind of start there in terms of how you can make the biggest impact. We do a lot of emotional and more on the realm of the spiritual work. And so I truly believe that, it's really, what can you figure out on your own? Listen to that voice inside of you and figure out where you're being guided, right? Look to those messages, use your innate intelligence, and really key in on what is the next step for you personally, because so much of our world is shutting off our ability to know what's going on with ourselves. And I would really challenge people, just listen to what your body is trying to tell you.
Beautiful, Terri. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for being here. The audience is going to gain so much from this show, and I know they're going to be able to take all these things, and there's going to be a lot of where the rubber meets the road, a lot of actionables from this episode. So I hope we'll do it again. There's so many things that we could talk about as far as the extent of your practice and the people that you help. So I hope you can come back in the future.
I would love that. Thank you so much. This has been a really amazing experience.
I love it. Thank you for being here. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.
Ladies and gentlemen, you made it to the end of the podcast. Now, in a world where the average attention span is less than 10 seconds, we just spent almost an hour together. And I think this is the beginning of something really beautiful. Now, one way to support the podcast is to head over to freddysetgo.com and check out my newly launched page, Freddy's Faves, where I've linked every 5-star product and healing modality you hear about on the show. Most offer significant discounts by clicking the link. And please know, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and at the same time, they support the show through affiliation. So check out Freddy's Faves on freddysetgo.com. This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, AmpCoil, upgrading the vibrations of hearts, minds, and bodies all over the world. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Grabbing a download is like giving this virtual thumbs up that we're doing it right. And if you want to connect with me, shoot me a message on Instagram at freddysetgo.com or at freddysetgo. That's all for today. Our closing. The world is hurting. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading, whatever it takes to move the needle. Remember, while life is pain, putting those fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I'm your host. I love you. Namaste. Have a wonderful day.